Welcome to Alex and Annie, the Real Women of Vacation Rentals. I'm Alex.
And I'm Annie.
And we are joined today by Simon Lehmann for our May 1st, first of the month bonus episode. Simon, it's great to see you.
Hi, Alex and Annie. It's great to be with you again. Looking forward to it.
Been a long time since we've been able to chat. So I know you've got a lot of things to share with us. And I think we wanted to start by like the state of the union as it is for vacation rentals. What are you seeing from your lens, both internationally from the US and internationally for us from the US, so within Europe?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. State of affairs. Where are we? I remember closing the VRMA Executive Conference in Palm Beach last year with an umbrella on stage. And I said, if it's sunny outside, don't forget your umbrella. And, I think we are now needing a bit of an umbrella out there. Again, I don't want to generalize things, but, what we have seen in terms of growth, in terms of performance in ADRs, occupancy, and all other metrics within the industry in 2022, we were very skeptical that this can be replicated in 23. And we always need to be very careful that we're not generalizing statements and say, it's bad for everybody, it's good for everyone. But overall, I think the market has become a lot tougher. We have seen quite substantial softening in performances. We have seen reduced booking windows. We have seen softening in ADRs and potential also occupancies. When we were talking to people and planning on 2023 budgets, they were sort of trying to go back to the numbers in 2019, and anything that is better is great. 2022 was a record year for the industry without a doubt in literally all markets across the globe. But now we're definitely seeing a slowdown that will affect the business, and I would be cautious right now in terms of planning for the remainder of the year, and then see how certain metrics macroeconomically will turn out in relation to inflation, interest rates, et cetera, et cetera.
So have you seen, we're talking about slowdown, I think that one of the things that Alex and I talked about towards the end of last year was that we were definitely going to see more balanced out towards 2019. Like the numbers were going to be more in line with 2019, and fearful that some people got a little aggressive the last 2 years, and we're going to think they were in a position to continue to be aggressive in terms of ADR and their policies, and really not understanding where the market was. And so with that, I feel some people are shocked at the slowdown. They're shocked at ADRs falling the way they are, and maybe didn't plan as maybe as appropriately as they should have. But in terms of, I guess, acquisitions and things where you sit on the AJL side when you're consulting with people, are you seeing a slowdown in people actually wanting to sell from the property management side versus the technology side? Or is there any like big movement happening there that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think your question sort of has two pieces to it. Let me quickly go back to the first piece you mentioned. I think we all would have thought that during COVID in 2020, we all realized that we need to manage crisis, and we have managed crisis extremely well, right? Some better than some less, but overall, I think the industry has rebounded very quickly. Asset-light business model, and we were able to rebound very quickly. Fastest rebounded travel vertical is the vacation rental industry. And I was very confident that we'll come out of this crisis pretty strong. But what we haven't done is we all talked about, what do we need to think about when the next crisis or a slowdown comes? A squirrel, to get over the winter, will always make sure it has plenty of food stacked away somewhere. And we need to do the same, right? And I'm not too sure if people have really used the good times, gold mining times, to put some nuggets under the bed to fuel cash flow requirements through slowdown periods. We're in a heavy seasonal business in most destinations, and you need cash flow for 12 months and not just for 6 months or for your high season. So you need cash flow for the entire time, and therefore you need capital at your disposal also to go through times where cash flow is negative. So you have more cost than you have income. And I'm not sure yet, but I don't think too many people have really being very cautious on planning that and said, okay, we have now had a great year in 22, so make sure we're stashing things away. We're having our staff locked in. We have our contracts locked in, and we've done everything that we could to sort of de-risk our business in terms of distribution, in terms of tech stack, in terms of automation of what you can automate with guest experience and the likes. But it seems that we've been too busy to raking it in and making a very good year, which is great. But now when things slow down, I think we haven't taken the real measures that we should have in order to accommodate also slower periods. So what does that mean for the M&A market? I think we can see clearly a sign of slowdown on the M&A market, without a doubt. But for me, that this is twofold. If we look at the US, we've had a couple of large companies who have invested quite heavily in M&A, which has obviously fueled transactions going forward. One of which obviously is Vacasa, and the other one I would call it V-Trips. And they have clearly slowed down. Vacasa has entirely slowed down. You know, last year they even they have dissolved their M&A team. So that's a clear statement. Hey, we're not making any acquisitions right now. We want to rebound through organic growth and do it this way. And V-Trips has also, you know, been extremely focused in M&A, but now it's clearly saying we're also going to explore some other business models, such as owner operation. So when two strong buyers are coming from the market, that means, you know, it has an impact on all M&A activities, because obviously when there's buyers in the market, that drives up prices. If there's demand, it drives up the value of the businesses. And if the two big acquirers are not as acquisitive anymore as they used to be, will have an immediate impact in, hey, who do I sell my business to and what do I get for it? And the same in Europe, it hasn't not been the same. You know, we have not seen the same amount of transactions that we have seen in the US over the last 3-4 years. You know, the market is different in terms of structure in the countries, and the large operators, they're not as acquisitive. They're all profitable. Yes, if something fits perfectly in their portfolio, they might buy a property manager in Spain or in France where it perfectly fits, but they're not growing their businesses strategically just by acquisition. So we never had this type of, you know, massive, with some exceptions, the UK market and the Danish market, very traditional short-term rental markets. The UK market had 2 strong buyers or 3 strong buyers in the market, Travel Chapter, Sykes and Aways. So they were obviously buying up PMC. So we've seen a lot of transactions in the UK. We've seen transactions in Denmark. It's a very controlled market. We have seen the local strong players making acquisitions, such as Belleville and Oyo Dance Center. These guys have definitely made acquisitions in these markets, but other markets have been less dynamic in terms of M&A because there were not traditional buyers just trying to gobble up pieces. So I think what we're seeing now going forward is we're seeing even a further slowdown. I think a lot of people now think, hey, do I still get value? What kind of value do I get for my business? And that's always the first question, talking about what's the valuation of my business. When the market is not as active, it's like demand and supply. Well, then obviously the expected multiples or valuations are not there. And therefore people say, well, I might as well wait, or I might as well get ready for it and use that time now to increase or improve my foundation to have a more solid business.
See, I've heard from quite a few operators in the States that are considering selling now, and similar that I've heard from a lot of homeowners that are saying they're considering selling their unit now. So, you know, is it better to, on the company side, is it better to, would you say it's better to sell now before, you know, we're going to definitely have a lower year come come after the off season? Is it better to sell now before that, or to wait?
Yeah, great question. I think, and you've raised another very interesting point. And before I go deeper, I think we want to both agree on differentiating the market into professionally managed and the RBO market. The RBO market where the owners are. So let me start with that, Alex. One of my predictions, and if interest rates go up, this Airbnb owner frenzy is going to stop because you can't serve your debt anymore. Right. If your ADR is going to come down, your rate of invested capital is going to come down. And then, maybe let's assume you've bought 5 to 10 of these units, and you're super exposed and you had a great year because, money was coming in, occupancy was high, ADRs were great. And now all of a sudden you pay maybe twice as much for them on an interest rate basis. So that means it halves your margin on what you make out of these houses. And then on top of that, the market slows down. So I think
it's perfect storm.
that for Airbnb, it's going to be the perfect storm, because we will see this Airbnb frenzy of these Airbnb owners who use that platform to make the maximum the return of their real estate investment. That's going to slow down. So that will bring potentially not more supply in the market, but this will potentially strengthen the position of professionally managed inventory.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that they will bring their units to the professional managers, though, if they're already going to be making less than they were used to last year? I mean, now they also have to give up a commission if they do that. Or are you saying they're just going to sell and then somebody else buys them and puts them on a program?
I think we will see different scenarios, Alex, and I would never say that's the scenario we're going to see. I believe there will be certain scenarios where they will just say, well, I'll just give it to a professional manager. He knows what he's doing, and I can go back to my day job or whatever and say, so I am a strong believer that we will benefit from that. And we have seen that in other financial crises.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have a lot of gray hair, and I've been around in 2008 when we went through the financial crisis.
Give yourself some credit. You're still a blondie.
So when we went through the financial crisis in 2008 in Europe, with the subprime crisis, where all these lending markets just exploded, the Spanish banks were sitting on billions of assets of private owners. What happened? The professional property management market was flooded with inventory to rent. So for us, it was great. We had growth like crazy in Spain because we got all these units that we were able to start to rent, because if the market is flooded with more homes, that doesn't mean that the real estate price is gonna increase. And so we will see different things. It depends on the market again, on the destination, et cetera, et cetera. But we will see RBOs who will simply sell their unit and it will go from the market. That's one thing we will see. The second thing we will see is that we will see RBOs who will say, hey, I'm going to give these my 5-10 units that I've managed now for the last 3 years, 4 years. I give that to a professional property manager and see if they can do a better job than what I was able to, because I need a day-to-day income and potentially go for a full-time job again. Let's not forget how many RBOs have given up their day jobs because the business was just incredible, right? And so the professional managers will benefit from potentially having more inventory come to the market. But at the same time, it could also be that certain owners that now professional managers have over-leveraged themselves. And if you as a PM cannot deliver the same amount of ADRs and occupancy that you have delivered in the last couple of years, maybe even an owner that is using a professional property manager is maybe forced also to sell the unit. And if I would say if a unit is sold, the chance that it's coming back to the market, I would call that 50-50. Either the owner will use it themselves or it will come back to market. So I would see that being about 50-50.
Do you see a company, and I may misunderstand their model, but I believe Highgate is one that's buying inventory and then they're kind of like renovating it or like setting it up the way they want from a operational standpoint and kind of the FF&E within a unit. Do you see, because I remember in 2008 within Florida specifically, there was a lot of short selling and foreclosures that happened because again, people were over leveraged and they couldn't make their notes. And then they just were like, they just knew they were in a spiraling situation where it wasn't going to get any better anytime soon. So they just walked away from the asset. Do you see that as an opportunity for an organization like a Highgate or maybe even V-Trips to come in and actually buy inventory to pick up to like wholly own and manage the inventory?
Yeah, I'm not too sure if the timing is ideal for that. While money is more expensive, number one, while real estate prices really haven't corrected themselves as yet, if more comes to the market, then prices will obviously start to drop when people are more conscious about their own income. and their disposable income to say, hey, I might as well just sit on my cash right now instead of buying an asset. We have seen quite a few activities. So Realpha was one who came out very strong into the industry and said, hey, we're building the largest real estate investment fund, and we're going to go after buying a large number of units and manage themselves. I think for me, it's a question of scale, and do the math end up in the right proportion? While interest rates come up, you still need to have very clear metrics in how much ADR you can make and how much occupancy you can achieve on a unit, depending on your invested capital. So I'm not too sure if owner-operated investments and large funds are now the ideal time to come into the market, where you pay more for the money that you lend on one side. On the other side, the metrics are going down. You might need to reinvest in some refurbishment or whatever, and it's capital intensive. It could be very tempting because you want to be less reliable on second home ownership relationships with private owners, and you want to manage your own assets. That all makes a ton of sense, but that makes even more sense if that is happening in a time where the market appreciates. And the question now is really going forward: is the market appreciating over time still, or do we see a correction in valuation on real estate or leisure real estate? And maybe in 6 to 12 months' time, when we see prices going down, then real estate funds come in and buy up a larger number of units would make a ton of sense. I think it's too early to say if owner-operating large investment funds are now coming into the market to gobble up units because they still need to deliver quite an aggressive performance to outperform even the long-term rental market as well.
Mhm.
Sure.
Yeah, interesting. Before we came on the air, I commented that the notebook that I'm using is one that I had last year that somehow it got recycled. But our notes from last year on the May 1st of the month bonus episode that you joined us on talked about how at that point ADRs were up 15% over 2021, and booking windows were up 14% over 2021. And obviously that's changed. Now we've gone back much more closely to what it was in 2019, but it's easy to forget where we were and just think that just where we've been the last couple of years is just standard, but obviously it's not. And I think in a lot of markets we saw homeowners that really invested back into their properties, which is a good thing. They're probably a little bit upset now that they might wanted to have saved that money, but at the same time, those are good investments for the future of the property. But I would say, for companies that are thinking about selling, if you still like this business and you still want to be in the business, this is going to be an interesting year that you'll be able to pick up more inventory. Like Simon said, there's going to be a lot of different shifting around. And if you can hang in there, this is still a great business to be in, and it might be too early to throw in the towel.
Absolutely. So let me come back to the second piece of your question, Alex. Is it a good time or is it not a good time? When it's always, we can go back to Warren Buffett. One of his biggest quotes is "Don't be greedy," right? So I love that one. And this is a challenge with any investor, right? So when you see the market going up, you will say, I'm hanging on. Hey, they're paying maximum amount. They're paying big bucks for these property management companies. I'm on fire. I want to continue. And then, I'm going to sell for more. So they hold back. Others say, hey, I'm done. The market is ripe. I want to sell. So let's do it. So we've seen a lot of that in 22, I think. Market was good. Forming was happening. And people wanted to bring that home. So that I think, when you're in a market where your overall interpretation is that I'm getting good money from my business now that I've worked for the last 10, 15 years, never had a holiday and everything else, it's a good time to sell. When markets are slowing down, then you have two types of sellers, right? One is, okay, I'm going to go through this and improve my business, to your point. So I have now, and I would agree with you, I think at the moment you have massive potential to get your business ready for a sale. Do your homework. Because doing homework while you're super busy, it's very challenging. But do your homework while you may be not so busy is a better time. review your tech stack, look at your financial hygiene, do you have everything under control in terms of your finances and operation? Is everything streamlined on your operational costs and expenditures? Do you run a super oiled engine, and now you're ready to get more supply? Because I would assume the supply growth will be there without a doubt. If the market doesn't recover over time, then supply growth will drop, because then units will be sold. But I think there's still a lot of bet out there that people will say, okay, let's see what I can make with an STR and give it to a professional property manager, because they can do a better job. So I think it's a good time to oil the engine and wait this through and use that time to really bring your business to the Champions League in terms of performance, financials, and everything else, and get this through. Others, and I'm not saying the market is not opportune now also to make an exit. I think there's still a lot of appetite, but it now depends on which market segments. So let me quickly go there. One of the things we have seen in COVID, what has been the most resilient market segment in vacation rental has been the upper and the luxury end of the market, right? That has performed exceptionally well, because there's always rich people, and normally in downturns, rich people get even richer in terms of their capital. So there's definitely enough capital to be deployed, or money to be deployed and spend in the upper incoming level of the individuals. So the luxury rental market has proven to be extremely resilient and growing. So everybody's running after luxury. So one thing we have seen, it's interesting, we have seen a lot of in the mid to lower end of the market, we have seen more strategic acquisitions, either by the large guys or by somebody in the market who is buying his competitor, et cetera, et cetera. In the upper end of the market, we have seen more external investors coming in, like private equity. We have several examples, like Stoic Lane, like Nocturne with Gladstone, and we have seen others. The Collectionist in Europe has raised 60 million. Lacure is also backed by some private equity. So there is, in the luxury rental space, there has been a lot of appetite for investors to come in, because it's proven to be pretty resilient, because high net worth individuals, they can always travel no matter what the economical situation is all about. So I think we will see more transactions in the upper end of the market, luxury and the likes. And I think in the mid to lower end of the market, in terms of portfolio, we will definitely see a slowdown. And I would more propose to companies right now to get on their homework and get a stable business and show what they can deliver even in a slowdown market. When you sell your business, you need to provide a business plan anyway. So you can now review business plans of 23 against the actuals in 6 months' time, and you will see that they will not be able to achieve what they've anticipated to achieve in terms of their business plans. And when investors come in, or a buyer, he looks at what have you done in the last 3 years in terms of business. Mm-hmm. And then they will tell you what you do in the next 2 or 3 years with your business. And optimism has always a large discount. So I think at the moment, if you I'm not saying the market is extremely low in terms of valuation, but definitely not its best. And you can still you can still test the water.
What sort of multiple are you looking at right now?
Yeah, that's a great question again, and really different. Is still a huge variable. In terms of size of the business, location, contracts, maturity of business, management team, technology, not so much. But there's so many factors that take into the multiples. I think you could still start at a multiple of 4 times EBITDA, earnings before interest and tax and depreciation. I think an EBITDA multiple of 4 can still be achieved, only if it's a super small business, maybe less. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have seen valuations of 20,000 property companies of 13 times, and that's not achievable, right? So I think if it's a good, solid business in a market that has addressable market, so how big is the total addressable market? What is your market share in that market? What is the quality of your portfolio? What is your churn rate, etc.? So there's so many different factors. But I would say the spread in the market today, and this is, I know, not a very qualified answer in a way, but that's the spread we're seeing. We still see a spread between 4 and 10 depending on all the different aspects of how somebody looks at a valuation of a business.
Do you think on that, and I think we've had this conversation before, like looking at Vacasa as an example, some of the acquisitions that they made, they paid pretty high multiples. And I think at the time, I just, in my experience being in property management, I just thought that's just not sustainable in terms of return on investment long term, because the market is going to fall back down to where it was, pre-COVID. And they were buying things at such a clip through COVID, after COVID, up until last year. Do you think that that's part of the struggle that they have, is that they bought at such a high end, just like we're talking about individual owners who have over leveraged themselves, that they may have just bought too much and not really thought about the long term of those multiples? I mean, I know that they say they have a model, and I would assume it's a pretty well vetted model, but it just seems like they bought a lot at a higher valuation, that it just wasn't long-term sustainable.
Yeah, I mean, great question. The way I see it, the one has nothing to do with the other. So in terms of how much you pay for a business, that does not have a direct impact in how your stock performs or how everything else is going. And then you potentially run out of cash. For a buyer, especially a strategic, so let's use Vacasa as an example, especially a strategic, what is he looking for? He's looking at increasing his market share in a specific market, or have a market entry. So it's either new or an add-on. And he's looking for synergies. And there's a strategic multiple behind, right? So first of all, there's a market multiple or a financial calculated multiple, either over free cash flow, or there's many different ways in how you can value a business, also based on contract, gross margin per contract, how much you pay per contract, if it's an asset deal. So there's different ways in how you can value a business. But then, and that's what the buyer in most cases doesn't talk about, what is the strategic value of that acquisition, which then adds to what you potentially pay for that business. And then you can say they've overpaid it. But their math is telling them, so if they have 100 units in one market and they can buy the competitor of another 100 and integrate that entirely in the organization and have very additional fixed costs in making that happen, then there's a strategic value for them that they pay for, and a higher multiple for that business, because they can return the money a lot faster. So there's two things that are then falling off the truck is, what is your assumption on churn? And that's one of the biggest questions for strategics. When you buy a business, you need to be, put a comfort zone or a comfort buffer into your assumption of how much units you're going to lose. And I think they've lost more units in their acquisitions than what they were anticipating in their models. Ultimately, they pay too much for it. So if you buy 100 units and you lose 40, you have 40% churn. Right. Yeah. And when you make your model of acquisition, you might make your model with, and I always said, and I've said that several times on podcasts and conferences, is that if you're a good strategic operator and you have a market presence in an existing market, you should plan between a 15 to 20% churn. That you lose these owners who will go
through an acquisition.
Else, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Have you seen that change over the last few years, or is that about standard? Based on if you're an existing operator?
I think that's about standards. Yeah. It really depends on what is your model of taking it over. And then obviously it very much depends how different the owner contract conditions are. I mean, obviously, if the previous company, let's say, had a 20% commission and the new company wants 40, then of course the churn rate is going to be a lot higher. And then owners will say, well, I'm not going to go with that company. So it really depends how you handle that contract transition because at the end of the day, the loyalty, and that's still something that hasn't changed in 20 years I've been in this industry, the loyalty by homeowners is still driven by occupancy and occupancy and occupancy, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of things, but I think these models have had a far more aggressive, lower churn than what they ultimately ended up with. So you ultimately pay too much. Therefore, the synergetic value that you wanted to create through this acquisition are not going to materialize, because you're only securing maybe 20 or 30% less supply than what you've planned in your model and what you're willing to pay for an acquisition. If somebody straightforward pays for a property manager like that, they would never pay that multiple. But a strategic multiple who can absorb all the overhead and have more contracts in the destination can considerably pay a higher multiple. But if these assumptions do not materialize, then you end up having paid far too much for it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now, we're going to be seeing you, or I'm going to be seeing you very soon at the VRMA Executive Summit. I'm very disappointed that Annie can't make it, but we'll, Simon and I will have to recreate the tropical storm Alex video, Annie. The tropical
Looking
storm
forward to it.
Simon.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of practice to get that right this time, but I'm sure Simon will get to hear more about all of this at the show. And of course, we'll have you back to share your take on what we all gleaned from that event and different things that we heard from operators. But anything else exciting coming up that you're looking forward to, or anything else we should know about?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you both so much. It's always great to see you and have this amazing conversation. I want to congratulate you on what you have built with Alex and Annie in the marketplace. And it's great to follow you, despite the fact that we're not seeing us each other on a monthly basis anymore.
No, thank you.
I even more enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Thank
I think what we're, I don't want to end the conversation on a bad note, but obviously one thing that I'm super excited about is that now it's again event time. So London next week, then Tel Aviv Festival, which I'm looking forward to. London has 800 participants. That's the SDAA. Wow. Vacation rental executive, VRMA executive, 150 to 200 attendants. So then we have scale up rental in Barcelona, and I'm glad that my team can now go out there and I have to do less traveling and I can be at places where others can be at the same time, which is awesome. So we're really looking forward to the conference time. Having said that, one thing that really concerns me right now and is really what we're seeing on the regulatory horizon. And we need to stand together as an industry more than ever before.
Do you think it's getting worse?
I'm not.
Is it getting worse?
I can speak for Europe. We are seeing London cranking down, like it literally looks like they want to totally get rid of it.
Wow.
In Portugal, the government will literally make vacation rental in apartments impossible. So we're seeing some massive changes out there, and we need to be aware of them, and we need to and we can see what individuals can actually happen. So they've raised a lot of capital in terms of the VRMA advocacy and other organizations, which is great. But I think it's not just capital, it's individuals like you and us who are influencers in this industry. We can contribute a lot more than just cash in having the right conversations out there to make sure, number one, vacation rental property management is seen as a professional business, that we're taking care of the service and we deliver everything for the guest, number one. Number two, we're creating more value than an average hotel room. It's a fact. People shop in the destination, they consume the destination, they go outside to restaurants and everything else. So the average spend of a vacation rental guest is substantial, and people need to understand that the value creation for a local community in vacation is a little higher. And number three, people need to understand this industry is not just the Airbnb real estate phenomenon that was created. Professionally managed business has been around for years, and we need to stand up for what we have built, because this is a professional business that should not be put down by regulation just because regulators and lobbyists don't understand the value creation and the quality of the business that we're delivering to the community.
Yeah, and I sit on the advocacy fund for VRMA this year, and just the focus on trying to outreach to people to get them engaged. And I think, to your point, the money is really great, and we absolutely have to have the money to offset the expenses. Sure. But the engagement is crucial. There are markets where there's just not enough engagement and people aren't standing up until it's too late. They're not being proactive. And I think organizations like the VRMA advocacy, and then also like Rent Responsibly with Dave and his team, like what they're trying to do at market level, like that's so important. And I think that there are few people that are very active and very vocal, but we need to get more people involved in it. And I think that's one thing that Alex and I recognize, that through our podcast and through other podcasters, like, we can absolutely further that conversation and bring more people to the table, so that we can not necessarily fight regulation, because I don't think all regulation is bad, but make sure that the regulation that is being put forth it makes sense. Because again, to your point, just in Florida, there's so much regulation that's out there that they want to shut things down. And we thrive. I mean, our state thrives off of tourism, and the fact that they would want to shut some of these down, it would literally cripple some communities, and they're just not understanding that.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, smart regulations is where we all need to be focused on, because it's like, I mean, Florida, we were
Yeah.
just talking about that at our Chamber of Commerce meeting this morning. There's no barrier to entry for Florida at all. You don't have to have a license. You can really jump through things. You don't do trust accounting. I mean, you can get started very easily. And, sometimes having all of those levers just on go ends up being that you then have to backpedal and make these restrictions that are not going to be for the better good of the destination and the good apples, like we all are. But yeah, definitely, we support VRMA's efforts and Rent Responsibly's efforts in this. We were just on a panel this week with Rent Responsibly. They always bring a lot of great content and attention to this. And hopefully we can get more of the STR crowd involved in these conversations, because there's so many people out there that we just don't even reach within the professional organization. I mean, there's 35,000 vacation rental companies in the United States, and I think 3,000 or so are VRMA members. So there's still a lot of
opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity. Let's stay positive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity. And then when
Yeah.
you combine that with all the individual hosts that are out there, I mean, it's probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions. So a lot of opportunity, a lot of work to be done, but we are on top of it. And Simon, we appreciate your insight and intellect on this subject, and look forward to chatting with you again soon. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to reach out?
The easiest way for them to reach out is obviously find me on LinkedIn, or my email address, simon.lehmann, LEHMANN @ajlatelier.com.
Perfect. Sounds
and
good.
come to the conferences.
Yes, and come to the conferences. I mean, you got to be present to to be part of these conversations. But by the time this airs, Annie and I will have just gotten back from the NWVRP event in Reno. So we're looking forward to that. But anyways, if anybody wants to contact Annie and I, you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com. And until next time, and Simon, until the next first of the month that you're coming on in a couple months now, we will see you soon.